You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Believe it or not, I really don't look forward to telling you all of the latest examples of judges from the local level all the way to district courts around the country taking what should be the important job of upholding the United States Constitution and the laws within their jurisdiction, and instead participating in the same kind of activism that, of course, we have to play yet again, that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer bragged was the entire point of having a Democrat judge in the first place. Here is a quick reminder before we get to all the rest of the chaos. Here's Chuckles the Great.
There are those who believe that we are in real time living through an assault on the constitutional order. Do you believe that we are in a constitutional crisis right now?
Yes, our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways.
Yes,
the good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges, judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time. And we hope that the appellate courts, when it gets up there, and the Supreme Court will uphold those rulings. They restored the money to NIH. They required that 8,000 federal employees have to come back. We're in over 100 lawsuits against them, and we are having a good deal of success. It's only at the lower court level right now.
Now, since he made that statement, there have been a surprising number of judicial actions, which we have reported on as closely as we can. Special thanks to Margaret Cleveland over at The Federalist for keeping such a close eye on those particular judicial rulings. Got a chance to talk to her last week in Washington, D.C. She loves the Tony Kinnett Cast crew. She is at least happy that there are some shows out here that instead of covering our latest hair day, we're covering the judicial rulings from around the country that happen to impact you quite a bit. For example, in Minnesota, in Hennepin County, one particular judge has decided that after a jury overwhelmingly voted that Abdifatah Yusuf, a name that doesn't quite come out of Kansas, had committed $7 million in Medicare and Medicaid fraud, that she personally was just going to waltz in and flip over the table, overturn the ruling, and just say to hell with rule of law in Minnesota. Well, what rule of law there is. This clip appears to be from KARE 11 in Minnesota. I just want to make sure that we get the station designation right. Here's that clip.
At the August trial for Abdifatah Yusuf, the jury heard evidence that he ran his home health care company, Promise Health, out of a mailbox at a Central Avenue address where multiple other home health care companies were supposedly located. Yusuf and his wife, Lol Ahmed, were charged with stealing $7.2 million of taxpayer money through Medicaid overbilling in a personal care assistant, or PCA, scam. The couple allegedly spent tens of thousands of the fraud money on luxury items for themselves.
Of course.
Despite the jury swiftly convicting Yusuf.
Before we get to the judge, I just want to point out how often, producer Nick, that in cases of extreme fraud, these aren't individuals that are then Robin Hooding and taking it and then doling it out to the local Somali community in Minnesota. Oh, no. It spent $80,000 on luxury items. That's the most humanitarian thing you can think of, right?
Yeah, I mean, when they are Robin Hooding, it's to less than positive organizations that are getting the money,
Yeah,
a bit of
steal from the rich and give to the meek.
The foreign terrorist organizations receiving quite a bit of funding from that area as well.
Oh, we'll get to all of those Somali organizations that steal from children in a second. We'll let the judge, I guess, some kind of an explanation fall through here.
Items for themselves. Despite the jury swiftly convicting Yusuf, Judge Sarah West last week decided they got it wrong.
It's reversing or overturning a jury's verdict.
Defense attorney Joe Tamburino, who's not affiliated with this case, reviewed the decision and analyzed it for KARE 11 News. He says Judge West ruled that the state's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence and that she believed the state did not rule out other reasonable inferences.
That is insane. That's bonkers. There is nothing in a judge's... So what the judge is making the case says, well, sure, the jury decided that beyond a reasonable doubt, this individual this hallowed American, this Minnesota father, let's say, Abdifatah Yusuf. They believe without a shadow of a doubt he committed these crimes. But some white Karen liberal comes in and says, well, have we considered that actually I had some doubts? You're not one of the members of the jury, you absolute vomiting donkey.
That in fact there could have been other reasonable theories other than guilt in this case.
Other reasonable theories other than guilt. Producer Nick, I'm just gonna, if you don't commit murder, but you accidentally murder a person, it's manslaughter, right? It's not, you weren't trying to murder that person, it may be manslaughter. Have you ever accidentally committed $7 million in Medicare or Medicaid fraud over a period of years?
You got me.
You haven't? I accidentally almost committed $3.5 million of mortgage fraud once, but then I remembered I wasn't running for governor of California and I had never slept with a Chinese spy. So come on. I mean, anyone can accidentally defraud millions of dollars from
Does she
American
think this
taxpayers.
is like some action movie where like somebody's kidnapped and a bomb vest is put on them so that they're forced to go and rob a bank under duress?
Again, other theories to guilt here. I'm incredible. Someone forced them. All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to very carefully and explicitly.
His family was put on a bus that if $7 million wasn't transferred to the
Joker?
people, the bus would run into a wall.
Incredible.
That's what it comes down to.
Despite the ruling, even Judge West wrote that she is troubled by the manner in which fraud was able to be perpetuated at Promise Health.
You know what you can do if there's fraud that you don't like? You can take the person who committed the fraud and you can throw them into this wonderful, wholesome place called prison. And there, the only people they're defrauding are the other inmates, of which there may be a shiv at the end of such repetitive action.
I was stunned.
State Representative Kristen Robbins, chair of the House Fraud Prevention and State Oversight Committee, says she's now reviewing if any state laws need to be tightened.
Oh, I love the Minnesota action at that. Well, we're actually just kind of looking over any future possible actions, that may consider maybe in the future, maybe we don't allow people to get away with fraud. Or how about this? If the jury says you did it, you did it. I'm just amazing, incredible. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar is very, very upset. Representative from Minneapolis. She's having a really rough time, as well as our other young progressive squad members, because the Trump administration has removed temporary protected status for Somalis in Minnesota. By the way, this is why when people tell me that George H.W. Bush was one of the best foreign policy presidents of our time, I say, no, because it was George H.W. Bush who said, you know what we need to do? Let in a bunch of Somalis into the country. Sure, we don't share anything culturally, and there's all of this massive corruption and, the crimes that have been committed in Somali communities since those individuals have arrived in the United States has been higher than other communities, like how immigrants from Nicaragua are more likely to commit crimes in the United States than immigrants from Mexico, for example.
It's not like they're cheating our immigration system by marrying their siblings.
I mean, if you did marry your own sibling to cheat the immigration system, you should run for Congress so no one ever finds out about it. But we'll leave Brother Omar aside for a second here because she's mad. She says that Somalis actually have provided such wonderful joys. Somalis are the bedrock of America, don't you know? When the founding fathers were signing the document, I don't know if you know that John Hancock is actually Somalian. Look at me. I'm signing the declaration now.
It is my signature now.
Beautiful.
Somalis are not terrorizing this nation. We are helping it thrive.
With lots and lots of fraud. Yeah.
Somalis have always seen themselves as a fabric of this nation.
I've always kind of seen myself as a towel. You know what I'm saying? Apparently French people, they see themselves as washcloths, which is ironic because the French don't shower.
Well, are you a corduroy or are you a denim?
I've always seen myself as, kind of a cashmere. It's just,
So not only are we not going anywhere.
Well, your temporary protected status has been removed, so you might be going somewhere.
Not only are we not going anywhere.
Jeb Bush, please clap.
We are not going to allow anybody to make us feel less Minnesotan or less American.
Unless you're actually talking to people in Somalian, which you say we're Somalian first, screw the United States. And then you steal money from autistic children charities in order to send money back to the inbred adults in the leadership cast of Somalia. And I do want to make this clear. The leadership in Somalia openly brags about being incestuous. That's not me just pointing out how they all look very strangely similar and are considered an anathema among neighboring cultures for that precise stuff. But alas, I don't want to get bogged down in the details. State Representative Kristen Robbins actually does come forward to explain that she's really tired of the general kinds of fraud. I guess Minnesota Republicans might be good for something, maybe. We'll see.
Minnesotans are fed up. They see their dollars being stolen by fraudsters, and they are working harder than ever just to make ends meet. So Minnesotans are fed up with the fraud and the lack of accountability. I'm going to
level with you here. This is nothing on Will Cain. Will Cain's show is excellent. He does a great job of pitching up the questions here. Whenever a politician gets in front of the camera and says, boy, Americans are just fed up with the fraudsters and what my intern wrote on this index card, and we don't like it. Oh boy, we don't like it. And then all of a sudden we roll around to election season, and where are you knocking on doors and getting people out to vote and actually getting prosecutors that are going to prosecute people and judges that are going to send people to prison? When does that come around? Because right now what I'm hearing are, hello, this is the TV hit that I booked at 2:30 p.m. today before I went and got my cup of coffee.
I was curious about that, Representative, because Minnesotans keep electing very liberal politicians tolerant of this type of cultural rot and judges that let these people off the hook of any sense of accountability. And I do wonder if there's ever a tipping point for the people of Minnesota. Do they ever say enough is enough? It would seem that autism fraud should be that tipping point.
Yes, I think autism fraud and all the other vectors of fraud have brought Minnesotans to the tipping point. People had no idea the scope and scale of this, and unfortunately, I'm not sure we still have a handle on it. I think we are really at the tip of the iceberg. But as these charges come down, as these indictments are handled out, we keep peeling back the layers of the onion. So it started with childcare fraud, then it went to Feeding Our Future. Now we're at autism centers, sober homes, non-emergency medical transportation, integrated community supports. I mean, there's a long list, and we are just getting started.
You know, I can't help but notice that we always hear about this long list at the end of the list. You ever notice this? And if you say, man, you know, there's this person that has come from a foreign country and they haven't really assimilated to the community, but all of a sudden they have really cozied up to this NGO or this charity. I find that suspicious. There is a wing of the old Republican Party that goes, oh, that's very racist. How could you insinuate that someone from Somalia might have some ulterior motives? And then after 8 or 9 cases of millions of dollars worth of fraud each, it's, whoa, hey, wow, how could someone have guessed that the people that George H.W. Bush let in would do something like this when they said they were going to do it? I'm perplexed. You know, just one more wow, just for those who are awestruck at home. All right, moving on. We have more to cover regarding Minnesota, specifically with some riots developing in St. Paul in a little bit. More to the judicial chaos here. Another California judge, this time a U.S. District Court Judge, Casey Pitts, a Biden appointee, has now freed Brendan Monroe Thompson, a man pretending to be a woman, on bail. Now, this is rather interesting. This is a federal case in which this Brendan Monroe Thompson guy attempted to drive his U-Haul running over law enforcement, media and journalists, and bystanders. This is an act of terrorism. You say, Tony, how do you know this is an attempted act of terrorism? Because in Europe, when they succeed, they mow through a bunch of people. Lest we forget what happened in New Orleans almost 1 year ago. But this was stopped by the federal agents. Here's the clip of the U-Haul trying to back into federal forces when they correctly open fire. The smoke coming from the vehicle. Excellent. Now, this individual has been released on bail. I'm really not a fan of judges deciding that those who have committed really violent crimes can just be thrown back out onto the street because some left-wing activism fund has paid whatever bail money to put them back out on the street. This individual is not walking around with an ankle monitor. This individual is not under house arrest. This person is wandering free right now, as long as they show up for a future court date. This person committed an act of domestic terrorism. At what point do you impeach a judge for endangering the safety of the greater community? Bail is for dealing with certain civil disputes. Bail is for dealing with certain kinds of crimes which cannot easily be replicated. If you're a violent murderer, here's a hot take: no bail.
Yeah, how many stories do we have to hear of people being set on fire in the Chicago Loop by a criminal who had 22 convictions and was free walking around the city to be able to do that?
We do actually have this particular situation in Chicago. So I wasn't aware of this, but the victim of the Chicago Loop arson attack by Lawrence Reed, again, if you're looking at the live stream, really upstanding individual. Certainly, man, I could never have guessed that this individual might commit violent crimes. I mean, he looks so stable. The victim, Bethany McGee, again, would have been just as horrific, but I am also additionally miffed because this was a Hoosier that was set on fire. So for all of the whining about how Indiana perpetuates violence in Chicago because of our gun laws, I happen to notice that it is still consistently those from Chicago who attack those in neighboring states or anyone within the area of Chirac. Now, we'll get to some of the additional information that you should be aware of in a minute, but originally the reporting was he was arrested the next day and hit with federal terrorism charges, which could make him eligible for the death penalty if convicted. Please. And then the article, according to CWB Chicago, said Reed has 22 prior arrests since 2016 alone and 53 criminal cases in Cook County dating back to 1993. 9 of them felonies for which he pled guilty. That's 72 total arrests. Now, we have the total 72 arrests. But here's the catch. He's only served time twice. He has spent just 2.5 years behind bars in total because Chicago judges just kept letting him off the hook after all. I mean, think about how terribly horrible and awful and racist it would be if you kept violent criminals in prison. And don't just take my assessment of what the left says there. Here's Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, admitting that, bragging about that openly.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of...
By the way, the reason that the United States, as opposed to other countries, has the largest prison population of the world is because we don't put violent criminals to death. Other countries around the world, when they catch criminals, except for a handful of countries, put the violent criminal to death. You get arrested 4 or 5 times in other countries around the world, you're gone, you're done. The best you can hope for after you're arrested 6 times in any country in South America, any country in Africa, any country in Asia, the best that you can hope for is being deported. Oh, there's a lot of people in our prisons. Well, tell me, Brandon, did those people get picked up for doing anything specific? I'm guessing it wasn't for peddling Thin Mints there, Chief.
Crime and violence, the addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy.
Again, I'm never going to stop being just astounded at Mayor Brandon Johnson's claim that arresting violent criminals is racist. The idea that if you arrest people for committing violent crimes, that's somehow going to negatively impact black people, that's a wild thing to say. That's a rather curious thing to say.
Also, the continuous religious undertones that is brought about, it's unholy. Continuously, they appeal to people who observe a religion that they then turn around and say is uniquely racist, white nationalist, evil in of itself.
It's amazing how often they come in to disparage the name of Jesus Christ and then immediately turn around and use him as a bat to say, oh, well, you can't, actually hold people accountable. You can't protect men, women, and children. Because when someone is in the middle of a violent, animalistic rage, and for those who are on drugs, red, black, brown, white, green, blue, whatever you are, if you are in the middle of a mental illness breakdown, if you are in the middle of a drug-induced rage, if you are in the middle of a naturally through anger rage, you are not in the position to talk with a social worker. Hey there, pal, you just noticed that your blood pressure is a little bit high and also you're beating this person in with a tire iron. No, absolutely not. I will remind you that Mayor Brandon Johnson has close to 50 men at all times who are protecting him on a security detail. You know who didn't have 50 men protecting her on a security detail? The victim, Bethany McGee, who was set on fire by a man who was arrested 72 times and was in jail 2.5 years total. Insane. President Trump accurately pointed this out after calling J.B. Pritzker a fat pig. Again, correctly, today when talking about the pre-Thanksgiving, the turkey pardon. I'm glad he brought this up.
You saw all the crime that took place last night, the night before. The woman with the burning, they burned the woman. To be talking about that now, they burned this beautiful woman riding in a train. A man was arrested 72 times. 72 times, think of that. And they'll let him out again. The liberal judges will let him out again. But we're ready to go. We've been moving toward Chicago. We have a governor that thinks it's wonderful that only like 7 people were killed this week. But we are moving toward doing it, and we're going to, if crime gets, it's horrible what's happening in Chicago. We could make Chicago a safe city in a period of 4 weeks. In a period of 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, it would be totally safe. And the people of Chicago want us to go there.
Now, there are a lot of people who do a lot of muling and pearl clutching. I happen to notice from suburbs, from very safe suburbs, who go, how could he suggest the illegal orders, the president illegally ordering, as says Joy Behar over on The View, to suggest sending the military to cities? She scoffed from her gated communities. Incredible. The rest of the United States is very well aware of how flippantly those in the more elite coastal regions treat their safety. They're very aware that the nice gated communities full of lots of security guards and all of the financial goodness and wealth in places like Chicago make sure that, no, there's never going to be any crimes addressed because there's a bunch of young lesbians at Northwestern University whose vote we have to win, which means saying no to police officers. Good luck with that in the long term. This does bring us over to Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte, North Carolina, the Charlotte city government has now set aside over $100,000 to pay immigrants and businesses that supposedly lost money due to not being able to work or remain open while Customs and Border Protection was in town. I think we have this up on the B-roll as well. Let's swing it over. Yes, there we go. This is a media relations announcement from the city of Charlotte. They are openly bragging about this. The city of Charlotte today announced it has committed $100,000 in support of rent and utility bills for households adversely impacted by ongoing economic disruption across the community. These funds will support income-eligible households experiencing economic hardships due to economic disruptions, such as business closures and related interruptions to household income. And then they use a bunch of academic words like community stakeholders and influenced by the feedback and aligned with established city council priorities. Essentially, they are funneling $100,000 to the Charlotte Center for Legal Advocacy, Our Bridge for Kids, the Latin American Coalition, and the Carolina Migrant Network. As we head into the holiday season, it's important for all of us to lean in and support each other, Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles said. Unless you're riding the light rail system, in which case, screw you. We know many law-abiding people across Charlotte that were financially hurt. I got a little question here for you. Why were the law-abiding people financially hurt? Why? Why were the law-abiding people who were following the law here legally, why were they hurt? What's the deal? Why did they suffer financial hardships? I did go back through the Charlotte's Web operation footage, as well as some of the planning documentation. And I have discovered that at no point in time did federal offices send through their department agency, like public information officers, requests for certain businesses to close. So if you chose to close your business in Charlotte, it's your own damn fault. The argument that we need to financially prop up businesses because now there are no illegals here to spend money anymore is patently ridiculous and wrong. Oh no, the slave labor is no longer propping up our economy, Gerald. Oh goodness. I certainly hope that the Trump administration does push forward legislation through Congress that would fine any employer that hires illegal immigrants $1,000 a pop. That absolutely needs to go through. I don't care if you're a farmer. I don't care if you work in manufacturing and tech. I don't care if you work in the service industry. If you knowingly hire slave labor, because again, people who are illegally immigrated here do not have taxpayer identification. They may have stolen a social security number, which makes your business liable for crap, not to mention the person whose identity was stolen. We talked about that yesterday. It also creates a system in which you don't have to provide health care for them. Oh, how convenient for you. You don't have to provide the same wage for them because they're illegal. Oh, how convenient for you. Yes, you should absolutely be fined $100,000. And if you're caught doing it in repeat, should be 10 years in prison. And no judge should be able to overturn whatever jury oversees that case. Sorry, I'm finding it very difficult not to just flip something off. That's how frustrated this makes me. That's not all in Chicago or in Charlotte, North Carolina. Unfortunately, we will have to get to some of that later. Eric Swalwell is very, very grumpy about this from California. And that does bring us to the Congressional sedition and like angry beta men over on the left portion of the show. Here's Eric Swalwell throwing a hissy fit over all this.
It's a lawless United States. The Department of Homeland Security should just change its name because that's not what they are doing right now as they chase our immigrant community. But we have to, as Democrats, make it clear.
Chase our immigrant community. Again, they're all the same. They never differentiate those who have immigrated legally and those who have immigrated illegally. He just flows it right. This is a guy running up against the water buffalo Katie Porter for governor of California, Eric Swalwell, Chinese spy not included.
To Republicans, as we seek and intend to go into the majority, that they are going to have to answer for this, and it's all coming out. Because I promise you, right now, they think they're invincible. Said
the man accused of $1.3 million of mortgage fraud.
These ICE agents be invisible, and they don't think we have the balls to hold them accountable because they look at the way we've acted in the past where we didn't flex when we had power, and it's not.
Oh, yeah, right. They never have flexed when they've held power before. We're going to get to that here in a minute or two with this whole sedition nonsense and the judicial throwing out of the James Comey case and the Letitia James case. There's some new info there, and wouldn't you know it, it's old Chuck Grassley. But we'll let Swalwell continue.
Not about retribution; it's about accountability. And if we telegraph to them, no, you're coming to tell us everything under oath, under subpoena. You may not stop, and you can't reverse what's happened in the past, but you might stop the next actor who wants to do some corrupt drug deal with the administration. So it's a twofer in that you're going to hold them accountable and maybe deter future corruption.
I hate the academic buzzwords of it because no one actually talks like that. And number two, the idea that the Democrats are totally just abiding by the law and it's all totally wonderful and amazing and nothing is wrong and there couldn't possibly be any kind of seditiousness or, oh man, I can't believe the Trump administration would use that's not going to play. Because not only do the American people remember the last 4 years, so does the federal legal system. Producer Nick?
Yeah, when he said they don't have the balls to say, they don't think we have the balls to hold them accountable. I don't think you do. Because if you really did, you'd do it now. if you were correct in that you're trying to hold them accountable, you would have ways through the legal system to hold these people accountable. Why are you waiting till you're in power so that you can obfuscate and mismanage the system, use corruption to get your way? You don't have the spine to follow the laws in a lawful manner.
This is one of the reasons why Democrats are so desperate to keep the political system and the legal system and the way that elected offices are carried out in this country ambiguous and a bureaucratic nightmare. There was an excellent comment over from the comment section by John Elder, 4273. He said, when did the state prosecutor become responsible to come up with alternate theories? Isn't that the defense counsel's job? Yeah, absolutely. Correct. When we started creating the government bureaucratic apparatus so that every position is now the social worker to go on TV and go, well, you know what I feel? You know what I feel? No one asked for that. The idea that we needed to take every political job in this country and essentially turn it into Neil from Santa Claus, the weird therapist stepdad who's always saying, well, tell me, Calvin, how do you feel about being Santa Claus? No one asked for that. It is a means of obfuscating those of you who are not as elite as they are, who didn't go to the fancy institutions that they went to. And they'll use very large words and bore you to death and disinterest you. And you go have your panem et circenses. You go have your bread and your circuses. Take your AI slop. Take your cheap food. Take your Ozempic. And go shut up and leave the rest of us to running the country. The American people are tired of that. They're tired of it. And not in the same way that a Minnesota representative says the people of Minnesota are really tired of that. No. The American people being tired of this has put in place an administration that is actually going through and carving out some of the individuals perpetuating this elitism and getting rid of the misuse of federal funds and law and procedure and precedent in order to revert some of the encroachment. As far as I'm concerned, Minnesota right now, they haven't even figured out how to get their state house in order. Why don't you chill your jets there? We'll get to them in a minute. We got to swing out really quick, and then we're going to come back in with a little bit of a conversation on the sedition and the Department of Justice. Somebody's been arrested from inside the department for sedition and terrorism, which I was told was not going to happen. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't you go anywhere.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Well, the entire mess with the seditious six, as Pete Hegseth calls them, the Democrat congressmen and women who stepped forward to issue a video saying, hey, you, trooper, hey, you, soldier, sailor, airman, thaler, you don't have to obey illegal orders. You, right now, these are times when there could be illegal orders. You don't have to obey them. You don't have to obey illegal orders, those illegal orders. And then when everyone said, what illegal orders are you talking about? If you just meant this to be like a general announcement, why make this particular video? Because context matters, as we've already discussed, when it comes to interpreting the Uniform Code of Military Justice and how you can and cannot speak to members of the military, especially as Congress, who acts as one of the parents to the armed services. And they couldn't cite anything from Congress that was an illegal order given by the President of the United States. Now, this has boiled over on social media as well as in the Department of War, to where the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has now sent a memorandum over to the Secretary of the Navy asking for an official review of Mark Kelly's leadership, the retired naval captain, Senator from Arizona, who has led the charge on this, encouraging members of Congress who served either in federal law enforcement, in intelligence agencies, or in the military to encourage soldiers to consider mutiny. And this really upset Mark Kelly. He wasn't particularly thrilled about this. And he released, as we've already showed on the show, this beautiful photo of his uniform, his dress whites with all of the medals. And we talked about yesterday how he had the Soviet medal presentation. Like, he doesn't just have the ribbons, he has the medals draped over themselves. It took him out of the shadow box.
Like Christmas tree ornaments.
Yeah, like, by the way, you do realize he's taken them out of the shadow box and put them on the uniform medal per medal at a time, which is, it's a choice. I'll say this, it's a choice. I'm thankful for the fruit salad you're wearing on the chest. I'm thankful that you undertook those actions. However, using them to say that, well, you know, therefore anything I say is wonderful and fine now that I'm retired, no, not so. And Hegseth pointed out over on social media, quote, "So, Captain Kelly," because Senator Mark Kelly has been calling himself Captain on his social media handle, which, by the way, this is a little hot take here. There is nothing that those who are in service, out of service, especially the brass, and also contractors, who despise more than an officer who refers to themselves by their military rank. It is the most pretentious nonsense ever. It's like wearing your West Point or Annapolis ring to bathe. What are you doing? We get it. All right. So anyway, Captain Kelly, because he puts captain in his bio on his personal account, he said, "Not only did your sedition video intentionally undercut good order and discipline, but you can't even display your uniform correctly." So he says, your medals are out of order and the rows are reversed. When and if you are recalled to active duty, it'll start with a uniform inspection. So the keyboard warriors and the armchair quarterbacks immediately took to social media to say, well, the reason that the medals are in reverse order is because the picture is flipped. Checkmate, Secretary Hegseth. Now, if we're on the live stream here, I'm going to manipulate this image really quickly to see if I can pull it up here. If you zoom in on the medals, there's a little bit of a problem, though. And a little bit of a problem is that all of the medals are facing the right way. Like on the crest, the eagle's facing the correct way. If you zoom in a little closer, all of the text is legible, which means it's not flipped. You guys do know that if you flip an image, it doesn't flip the image and then leave all of the stuff in the image like text the way it's supposed to go. That's not how that works. So don't be an idiot, would be the advice to all of the armchair pundits over on the left. We'll talk about this more with Kurt Schlichter, repeat guest of the show over from townhall.com tomorrow. I do want to give a chance for Mark Kelly to actually give his latest very weak answer. Here's Mark Kelly.
When you and your colleagues made that video, were there specific, potentially illegal orders that you were thinking about that were the sort of precipitating cause for you guys to get together and do that?
Even Rachel Maddow, of all people, even Rachel Maddow, Tucker Carlson's old co-host, all right, even Rachel Maddow herself knows that in this issue, you need to ask, were there specific orders that you had in mind? Because if you're just saying out there like, oh, there's a lot of gaslighting going on right now. Oh, I'm just saying that in general, that you should, not disobey, or you should obey legal orders and disobey illegal orders. It's like going up to someone with bad breath and going, you need a breath mint, or you should brush your teeth. Well, yeah, we should all be brushing our teeth, but if you go up to someone and say a phrase like that, a loaded phrase, hey, you should brush your teeth once a day, twice a day, for you, 5 times a day, there's a little bit of weight to why you would say that. Even Rachel Maddow knows this. Hold on, we'll let Kelly answer here before we dunk on the man.
Here's the thing, Rachel. You don't want to wait for your kid to get hit by a car before you tell them to look both ways.
I'm sorry. What? You don't want to wait for your kid to get hit by a car before you tell them to look both ways. You guys do realize that in basic training, all the way from the enlisteds over at Benning, Army, old stuff, or whether you're at Camp Buckner for West Point, whether you're the ritziest little officer cadet hopeful or the gruntiest grunt eating crayons for the Marine Corps, they tell you very clear, they bring in JAGs who entire officers, their entire jobs as military legal officers is to explain the legality of orders and when you question them and when you don't. Especially I'm sorry, I can't let this get away. I have such contempt for a man who begins a question with, well, here's the thing. That's like a shorthanded way of saying, I'm not going to answer your question because the answer is obvious and it works against me. So here's the thing. I actually wear a dress. I'm Mark Kelly. And it's like, thank you. That's wonderful. Also, my kids don't get hit by cars. That's great, Grandpa. We're almost to your room. Beautiful. Producer Nick.
Based on comments from Gallego, we know that there was a script sent out for the videos, so I do find it so amusing that they put out a script for the video, but not a script for follow-up. Like, here's what you need to say so that you're all in accordance for when people ask you these questions.
Wouldn't you provide advice if there is some sailor out there who is in one of the battle groups in the Caribbean, who is currently on a ship that is targeting, because the liberal pundit class, all the media, they are now filling in the blanks for what orders they think are illegal. And that's the point, is that they want the American people to decide what they think from their awkward Sex in the City apartment after they get home to their 15 cats. What they decide is the illegal order. And that would be, as we already heard Joy Behar saying, well, it would be sending American troops to U.S. cities, not illegal, or launching kinetic strikes against Venezuela. But I do want to get back to Ruben Gallego because he came out with something more, Producer Nick. He's out here with some sedition plus. I think he really wants to be included in this referral by the DOW, and he's going to get it if he's not careful. Here you go.
First of all, it's a matter of free speech. Number two, what they said was basically restating what we all know. You, as a member of the military, have a right to disagree with illegal orders. Now, they didn't say what the illegal order is. They don't have to. They're just doing a frank reminder.
Oh, yes, a frank reminder. Oh, you don't have to obey illegal order. Why do they pretend to have so much respect for the troops that they say, well, you've taken this oath, but they're so dumb and they're so scurrilous, they have to be reminded of that oath? Why are both of those allowed? Also, it's not a free speech issue. You are not allowed to say whatever you want to the military. You cannot do that. Those of you out there who just think that free speech means you can walk outside and say whatever, I hate to break it to you, that's not what the First Amendment means. There are limits to what you can and cannot say to certain individuals. You cannot threaten or joke about killing the President of the United States. You can't. But I want to. Freaking tough. You can't encourage mutiny in the military. You cannot encourage or subtly wedge. You can't put a wedge between an enlisted and his officer. God forbid you put a wedge between an enlisted and his NCO. That poor sergeant's going to kick him in the teeth. Then he's going to kick you in the teeth. Producer Nick.
And is it a right or is it a responsibility? We continually flip between this. Disobeying an unlawful order, is that a right or a responsibility?
So,
because depending on which one of the 6 members you ask, it changes.
This is where we get into probably one of the fundamental issues right now that the United States has regarding the Constitution itself. We've gotten away from delineating between a right and a responsibility, because as a citizen of the United States, you have a responsibility. We pretend that citizen is just meaningless. As many rights as you enjoy as a citizen, you also have a series of responsibilities. That's why countries had residents and citizens. A citizen is responsible for the government. They are responsible for the collective body. You say, well, I don't like that. I'm actually a sovereign citizen. Okay, great. Well, I'm a dry whale. No, that's not how that works.
And by the way, I remember either was definitely in boot camp and definitely during our deployment that we also had a reminder that, the JAG officers would come in and say like, hey, by the way, here's the rules of war, everything else like that, right? What they were saying was perfectly sane and in line. What we need to understand is not what it says about them, it's what it says about Donald Trump, that he thought what he was hearing was illegal. They're just restating the Constitution of the United States and the oath that we all take. Like, why does he think that is such a threat?
I mentioned this on the social media sphere today, and it got a lot of the left really, really, really upset. Very, very, very grumpy over on the left side of the aisle. I made an analogy that if your spouse, if your wife, your husband, gave some orders to your children and said, I want you to do these things, and you followed them around the house and said, you don't have to do anything that's makes you uncomfortable. You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. You don't have to do anything. Again, you're just stating a truth. Parents set a standard for their children. You don't have to do anything that makes you feel personally uncomfortable, whatever, in that instance. Just by saying those words, you will cause your child to second guess absolutely everything about what they are doing. Teachers do this all the time, by the way. When I was walking through the classroom and I was watching my students take tests, you see a student that's messing up on a question. What does the teacher say? They address the entire classroom and they say, let's remember to read the question fully, class. Why? Are you just reminding everyone of a basic rule? No, there is a specific reason that you are insinuating things may not be mean. Say what?
You're doing it to be mean and unnerve the student you were just looming over.
No, I actually wanted that student to correct it without giving him like overt, obvious help. There are, again, a lot of people on this particular instance are being really disingenuous. They're just being really disingenuous. They don't actually think, oh, they're just reminding. It's just free speech. I went up to the Chicago police officer and I chucked a rock at his head, like a free speech person would do. No. I'm afraid not there, Chief. There are situations here in the country that do, in fact, matter in how you speak. Case in point, a Department of Justice employee has now been arrested for sedition and terrorism. Here you go.
First at 5, a federal employee charged with terrorism. She is accused of sharing the name of a federal agent with someone who made a threat against them. Thank you for joining us at 5. I'm Christine Galvan. Javi is off today. We learned of Karen De Leon's arrest just within the last 20 minutes. The Cameron County DA's office says she revealed the agent's name on a social media live stream. The stream was part of a federal law enforcement operation in June. Another man reportedly made a death threat toward one of the agents in the live stream. That is who she allegedly gave the agent's name to. The DA's office says De Leon is an employee at the United States Attorney's Office in Brownsville. She is charged with terrorism and tampering with evidence.
I mean, who could have seen this coming? Who could have seen very obvious actions that are meant to bring about certain political change as a consequence of the rhetoric and the encouragement from the left side of the aisle? Now, this does bring us over into our last judicial matter of the chaos today. You've heard all of the victory lap running around over James Comey and Letitia James, and then it got a little quieter today. I don't know if any of you noticed this. There was a lot less people talking about James Comey being off the hook and Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, being off the hook. After all, this is supposed to be a big deal. Oh, wow, the judge threw out the case. Well, in addition to Pam Bondi, which again, we played the clip yesterday, we're not going to play it again today, saying they're going to file an appeal. In addition to the federal statutes that make it very clear that if for a reason like was used by the judge, the indictment wasn't filed technically properly, she was at the end of her 120-day term, even though other members of the Justice Department co-signed on the indictment, that 6-month window to re-indict, therefore knocking James Comey's little window out to pasture. There's this magical word in law, boys and girls. It starts with a P, and it's called precedent. And it just so happens that there's a really, really rough sledgehammer of precedent coming to the Democrats on James Comey and Letitia James cases being thrown out over whether or not a prosecutor was appointed crossing every T and dotting every I. You guys know this name, Jack Smith? Jack Smith, the special prosecutor that was sent to go after the Trump administration and the Trump campaign team and a bunch of Republican senators. Chuck Grassley, whose hobbies include skateboarding, like Tim Burchett. I can just assume that Chuck Grassley also skateboards down the slopes of the U.S. Capitol, and royally messing people up who hide documents from the American people. Senator Chuck Grassley has now released another email in which case Jack Smith's office makes it clear that 1/4 of the Republican Senate was to be targeted, and the constitutional guardrails for subpoenaing and tapping and tracking and locating various members of the Senate were just completely tossed aside because Jack Smith really believed that he could get all of those individuals for sedition and treason. Hey, I've heard that before. Huh. You say, Tony, what does Jack Smith have to do with this legal precedent about appointing people? Merrick Garland didn't go through any legal processes to appoint Jack Smith. Attorney General Merrick Garland just said, presto. There's now a special office of investigation, Jack Smith. Congress didn't vote on that. There was no major confirmation process that cemented Jack Smith into place. And he was issuing all of these orders that federal courts, including the same federal court that overturned the James Comey and Letitia James case, there was already no issues there. So what does that mean? It means precedent is in place that, yeah, that argument, it ain't going to hold water. It's not going to hold water. Now, whether or not the appeals court brings that into play early or late in the hearing matters because of how things are going to be framed up. But in the appeals process, I guarantee you that it will be made very clear that the judge who threw out the James Comey and Letitia James case was totally fine with accepting any of the illegalities that Jack Smith, an illegally appointed member of the Department of Justice, brought forward under the Biden administration. Precedent is a real problem for people. And again, this is why it matters what federal courts do. Moving along from that, we're going to come back here in just a second. We're going to talk about some of the updates from St. Paul, Minnesota, Charlotte, North Carolina. There's some riot situation breaking out in St. Paul, obviously in North Carolina. Terrible shooting over the weekend we have to dig into because it is a mess down in North Carolina. And then a little more on the silliness from Congress. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, where I guess that since it's 7:59 and 21 seconds, I should really consider stopping and then saving all of this stuff for tomorrow. That's what a lot of other show hosts do. A lot of really good show hosts do. No, I want to talk about this stuff. I want to talk about it right now. So the bonus tonus section, we're plowing forward. There's a lot of news. Stick around with us for a little bit. In St. Paul, Minnesota, now we have Unrest individuals who are throwing trash, including what may be rocks, which would be attempted murder, at federal officials in St. Paul. Here's what that looked like. The volume's turned down really low because this isn't particularly censored. So I'm going to keep talking over this while they say certain four-letter words, which certain companies and agencies really don't like hearing on the air. There is a rock that appears to be thrown there towards federal officers. Yep, we'll go back to it, in fact. Right there. You can see the individual in the hoodie with the white slacks on the left side of the screen throws a rock. That's right, I was prepared on this particular clip, just not, beeping it to meet censoring standards. Disgusting. Disgusting. And by the way, that's attempted murder. That's illegal. It's wrong. Don't do it. Not a good thing. And then they get rightly tear gassed, which is my favorite. So here's the moment that the air gets a little bit spicy. Perfect for the lungs in fall. So again, the individuals who are following the federal officers and throwing rocks, they do get some tear gas in reverse. They start running around, shouting some angry things. This one guy runs forward into the tear gas and gives him the double bird before he gets a big lung full of it and then moves to the right side of the street. And then at the very end, as the Captain Double Bird sees one of the canisters skidded in front of his feet, decides that he's overstayed his welcome. You see that skids across in front of him. Zoop, he's like, oh, I'm out of here. Good times. Yeah, that's a riot. Again, throwing things at federal officers, not protest. Protesting, standing in a public place, not impeding traffic, and making it clear you are standing in opposition. You are voicing your opinion. It's essentially the verbal form of a petition. You say, but that isn't locking people out of businesses. Correct. The Hollywood vision of protests that you were showed all the way back to the Andy Griffith show, when the old ladies saying, "We shall not be moved." Yeah, that's illegal. It's not legal. It's not a legal form of protest. You can't stand there, glue yourself to a tree, say, "You've stolen my dreams," and then be a menace to everyone else. That's not how protesting works. No. Just because some moron from Berkeley who majored in being a big gay moron got up in front of you and said, hey guys, protesting means doing illegal stuff. No, that doesn't make it protesting. Doesn't make it legal. By the way, thank you very much to producer Nick for reminding me that for those who are listening on the podcast side of things, I need to describe what's going on the screen. It's hard to keep so many of the different ways we send this show out to the rest of the crew. I'm working on it. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, just mess after mess after mess. One after-school program in North Carolina, again, hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants currently in Charlotte, North Carolina. An after-school program was caught on undercover video sheltering illegal immigrants and just openly violating the law.
We need more assistance down those, at those entrances.
So right up front, you have the individual who is they always look the exact same. You have the gender confused, thin, emaciated individual with the glasses who always sounds about 2.5 heartbeats from a panic attack, standing there directing people, said, we need more assistance down at those entrances. What is the assistance for? She says, pointing people towards the front of the building. To hide illegal immigrants, those who have violated U.S. federal law, many of whom, as we've found out from the Charlotte's Web arrests, are violent criminals who have raped, beaten, molested, stolen, violently attacked countless individuals, are being sheltered at this particular after-school club.
At those entrances.
Oh, the hugs.
Hi,
Also
Donald.
brave.
This is Lily from our bridge. I'm just calling because we had reports that ICE is probably on campus. We were wanting to see if we could make rounds.
Uh-oh, ICE is here. Oh no, your little operation of violating federal law has been found out.
Inside, please.
This after-school program in East Charlotte has been a safe space for immigrant children.
Yes, in the front entrance.
But today there are reports that Customs and Border Patrol agents are approaching.
And I'd like people down at this entrance as well to just watch that door.
To watch the door. Oh no, it's a police officer. Oh no. They're treating this like they're about to be overrun by Al-Qaeda, but none of these media outlets actually cover the brutal murder of people at the hand of Muslim terror groups. Only when federal law enforcement in the United States upholds federal law. Then, it's the end of the world.
Staff rush to lock down the building.
They do not have the right to be on this. This is private property.
That's not how that works. They don't have a right to be on this. This is a private property, says one lady. If you are violating federal law enforcement, with reasonable suspicion you are violating federal law, can in fact come on your private property. Sorry. They have, at a school as well, an after-school program. A private or public school, by the way, in North Carolina is required to give access. What's the actual word? It's not transport. There's a legal term. They're supposed to give full access and assistance to law enforcement, state or federal, in order to operate as a school in North Carolina. Sorry, old education policy law trickling back.
They say this is the second day in a row that immigration enforcement has showed up.
We're walking up right now to a CBP sighting here.
Like the Sixth Sense. Like you're expecting to see Bruce Willis over somebody's shoulder. Look, we can see a CBP sighting right there.
In a statement to the Times, the Department of Homeland Security stated it did not target a school or daycare and denied trying to enter or make any arrests near the building. Across Charlotte, more than 370 people have been arrested so far.
By the way, do you know why it's confirmed that ICE didn't actually arrest anyone outside of the building? Because immediately after that particular moment, they would have then showed footage of ICE arresting people right next to the building. I said they didn't do this, but we don't know. The people with 437 cameras running around having an absolute psychotic breakdown, filming everything, including inside the bathrooms, that's illegal. You would have showed the footage. Producer Nick.
Also, them saying in the report that Border Patrol said that they weren't making arrests near daycare was because there was rumors going on, pushed by media, that they had made their way into a daycare to arrest a daycare caretaker, when in reality a couple had barricaded themselves, an illegal immigrant couple had barricaded themselves to try and get away from ICE officers, which also makes me beg the question, why is it a common occurrence that these people and organizations use buildings where children will be at to barricade themselves away from ICE?
Now, there's other stuff we have to get to, unfortunately, here. There are schools where teachers are encouraging students to run around yelling F ICE. We're not going to play that on the air. A church in Charlotte is essentially teaching members of the congregation in the community how to evade federal law. That's illegal. At a North Carolina high school, there was a big anti-ICE walkout. You notice what none of the media have actually been covering at the national level? This weekend, there was a shooting in Concord, which is a suburb of Charlotte. During a Christmas tree lighting, 4 people were injured. 2 teen bystanders and 2 suspects were hospitalized. 3 people have been arrested. Hey, you know what? Maybe if we actually focused on the epidemic of violence that was not a one-off in Charlotte, that you were told, oh, this is just a big rare thing, never happens. The number of crimes that are consistently, predictably occurring in major blue cities around the country are a cancer on this country. And it is why you have no reason, you have no argument, you have no responsibility to listen to these blue city politicians who care nothing for the safety of their own people, their own constituents. And then at the same time will tell you they also need to govern how your suburbs, how your smaller towns, how your rural areas are run. Oh, because boy, they'll fix it. Yeah, no thank you. No thank you. Horrible stuff. Again, the situation in and around the country with some of these individuals is heartbreaking. This brings us over to some congressional stuff. That's right. Bonus Tonus is just rolling like a train. We got things to cover. Cameron Kasky, you know who this is. This is one of the guys who was one of the March for Our Lives Parkland shooting survivor guys, kind of the David Hogg partner. He's now announced that he's running for Congress because I guess we've decided that if you have a big enough media presence and you're in your mid-20s, you need to run for office. I really don't like this. I don't like it when people from the left do it. I'm not a huge fan of people from the right who are doing it. But Cameron Kasky, he's out and he's got one thing to say. He's going to address it. He's going to dunk on Ronald Reagan. Oh yeah, let's go, I guess.
Everybody's talking about affordable housing. But why stop there? Hey everybody, it's Cameron Kasky, and I'm running for Congress in New York 12, not only to expand affordable housing and make it easier to build, but also to restore social housing. It is right there in the New Deal, and we need to deliver on that promise.
Social housing under the New Deal failed catastrophically. Every Republican and Democrat administration following FDR sucked as a president in general. He was awful. He's probably only second in horror to President Edith Wilson. No, also you're a congressman. I hate this idea that congressmen are running to enact local policy. If you want to enact local policy, run for the state assembly. Even Mamdani, Mr. Nipple Apron Rapper, got out there and at least was a member of the assembly in name. He didn't show up for anything.
That's Mr. Cardamom to you.
I'm sorry. Rapper Cardamom, Mom, Condom, Rice Man. Exciting stuff. Cameron Kasky.
I mean, moderate Democrats will talk all the time about FDR and how great he was until you start talking about the policies that are actually in the New Deal. And then they're like, no, oh my God, it's so scary.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Moderate Democrats will say that FDR was super duper. And no, he outlawed a ton of stuff in the United States. He was responsible for the last and greatest ethnic crime in the United States of rounding up and interning people for looking Japanese. And again, just the bevy of insane socialists. He allowed Stalin to carve up Europe. FDR is the reason the Soviet Union was allowed to continue and result in millions, tens of millions of deaths after World War II. And I think it's funny saying moderates really, when you start actually saying all the stuff he did, they're like, my God, that's kind of terrible. Cameron Kasky's like, you know what? We need to bring it back. Where are those Japanese people?
I'm not afraid. Right here in New York 12, over 10,000 people live in NYCHA housing, and we need to fight in Washington to keep this program funded.
Have you ever noticed that the housing kind of looks like it's not taken care of? So I talked to someone who ended up actually going outside of this area where he filmed this video, and they said that he had to really work to pan the camera angle right there so that you get the NYCHA housing in like the place where the sign is covering up almost a third of the screen so you can't see. That if you tilt the camera to the left or the right, it looks like a massive dump because people in government housing don't take care of anything. Just like the majority of people on SNAP benefits don't spend their SNAP benefits on healthy foods for their families, but on junk. Again, government funding tends to do that. Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword. The money that's being put towards the government housing is never properly allocated so that it's taken care of.
Well, because that's the nomenclatura. It's incredibly corrupt.
But also, we can't stop there. Affordable housing is great, and we need more of it.
So now he's sitting on the bench that the Oracle spoke to Neo before he fought like 50 Agent Smiths. Really, really good stuff. I just never have good news for you, kid. So he's sitting at that bench and doing his like youth pastor leans forward and addresses the camera routine.
And social housing is the next step forward. It is a
If social housing is the next step forward, dear sweet Lord, we're in trouble. We are in deep, deep, deep trouble. Social housing. Haven't you ever wanted your family to be crammed into a New York hellhole? Well, now you can. We're not going to let new buildings be built. We're not going to allow new structures and development and therefore increase the supply to meet the demand. No, screw that. Instead, we're just going to cram you into existing buildings that we're going to like subdivide. Of course, New York apartments are known for being spacious.
Yeah, we need the social housing because we used all the hotels, the nice hotels, to put all the illegal immigrants in. So now all the nice housing's used up. So now we need the social housing for the poor American veteran that has no job.
Yeah, come on, it'll be wonderful. Think about how great it'll be. Again, the Soviets tried this. Did it work? No, it did not.
Crucial means by which to improve the material conditions of working Americans everywhere. And by the way, it's what people want. People want this. The billionaires don't want this, but the people do.
So when he makes this case, by the way, there is a reason that polls matter in certain, I'm not sorry, he whines about Ronald Reagan at the end. I'm not going to listen to this goober anymore. There is a little fun fact on polling. When they say the billionaires, when either side, the right or the left, does this, they say, well, the billionaires, they want this. No one else wants this. The exact purpose of polling in this country is to show you that, yeah, there are some people who want this, and there's a lot of people who vehemently don't want this. So when someone like that gets in front of you and says, oh, actually, everyone wants this, no, that's not true. That's not true. You hear this all the time that a congressman or representative will get elected, and they won't be one of those that say, well, I'm actually for representing everyone in my district. I love everybody. No, then why did you run for office? If you do not have ideas to push, don't lie to me. Say, I have these ideas. I think they're going to work. I think they're going to make them better for everybody. But saying that everyone supports them is a big freaking dumb lie. Stop doing that. But he's young and stupid. Another small stupid thing that I wanted to point out is Representative Ro Khanna, Thomas Massey's buddy, the Democrat from California, saying that Democrats are the party of teachers and nurses. And this really pissed me off. But we'll let him at least start.
Breaking news. The Trump administration is saying nurses are not professionals.
They didn't say that.
It is frankly insulting. Nurses and teachers are the backbone of our community. Because of this change, nurses will not be able to get educational loans.
Oh, no. They're going to reduce the number of predatory student loans, Nick. Oh, man. Nursing colleges might have to actually lower their rates. Oh, man. Jeepers. Again, the Trump administration is not doing this, so he's literally making much ado about nothing. But even if this were true, no. That's not how loans work. If there's a college loan institution that knows we need more nurses, it's not as though the institution is going to go, well, I guess we're not going to have any more nurses.
For advanced studies or graduate degrees, I'm fighting to make sure nurses are classified as professionals again and that they can get financial aid.
Now, there's the irony. There's the real irony. Ro Khanna saying, I'm fighting so that we make nurses professional again. Nurses have not been professional in the United States for decades. And the reason is because Democrats pushed for a policy that refused nurses and nurse practitioners the rights to operate independently. In most states in this country, if you are a nurse, if you're a nurse practitioner, you're a registered nurse, or you're in the NP program, you are not allowed to operate independently. You must have a physician over your shoulder signing documents for you. If you've ever been on the floor of an ER, you know how often it is that an NP runs that floor. Again, not to disparage a lot of excellent physicians, a lot of excellent doctors. I'm just making the case that a lot of the states that give nurses independence in order to run and operate their own practice, again, deregulating things, are Republican states. I'm sorry, I have a personal bone to pick with this because my mom, actually, for a long time, had many postgraduate nursing degrees, very brilliant woman, and it was not allowed here in my own home state to actually move forward and operate in her own practice because the originally pushed legislature that then Republicans ended up backing, even though it originally came forward as a measure by Democrats in the state house, suggesting that nurses aren't smart enough to run their own practices. It's disgusting. No, you don't get to play that game. Absolutely not. I realize that we're 18 minutes into bonus tonus here. Well, we will push the New Yorker story back to tomorrow. I want to get into a little bit of good, bad, awkward with you, producer Nick. So we're going to leave very briefly. Don't go anywhere. We got to reset this last break here. And we're going to talk just at the end and maybe answer a couple of great questions in the mail time slot this evening. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
The lady police chief of New Orleans has now announced that they're not going to be enforcing immigration law, even though Louisiana as a state has its own immigration laws and requirements, because she says it's a civil matter, and then she attempts to describe what civil law is. This is the clip I tried to play earlier on in the show, and just incredible stuff. You got to watch this. This is the most awkward explanation I've ever heard.
Our confirmation from the judge that we are formally out of the consent decree, but along the way, I have preferred to use the term that we've graduated. We have taken back our own ownership of our agency.
I do like that there's someone in the back who's just yelling because she's a fraud. But anywho.
In the country, undocumented is civil issue. We will not enforce civil law. And so our support is to make sure they're not going to get hurt and our community is not in danger.
Okay, that's not how that works. So she's making the claim that being an illegal immigrant, again, if you accidentally cross the border illegally, let's say again, as the example I've used, if you're at Newark Airport, you have stopped in Newark Airport on your way through the United States, a connecting flight, and somehow you get outside the barrier. You skip the line, you go use the bathroom, you walk through a cabinet to Narnia, you pop out in the United States. That is a civil violation. If you overstay your visa, that is now a civil violation. And it must be waived by going to Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. That's the rule. Like, that's actually how this works. Because every single foreign embassy in the United States, for every country, period, all the way from Luxembourg to the Vatican, makes it very clear what you are supposed to do to get that civil liability waived. Now, if you then choose to stay here illegally, you are evading Immigration, Customs Enforcement. You're violating federal law. That's a criminal thing. But here's the issue. The idea that the police department doesn't enforce civil law, that doesn't make any sense here. So what she is alleging civil laws are civil disputes. The idea that you sue someone in Judge Judy and you're like, well, they gave my dog a calculator and now my dog's my accountant. And she's like, what are you? What is going on? You owe him $500. Like that kind of thing is a civil suit. Okay, the police do enforce that, by the way. They do. If there are summons to a particular court, then yes, eventually police departments do enforce civil matters. They do enforce civil law. That's why it's called civil law, not civil suggestion, not civil social standards. An HOA is a civil matter that is backed up by law, by a contract that you signed. Now, I think HOAs are disgusting, but that is an excellent example of this. Now, the Louisiana police departments are, in fact, required to uphold federal immigration law. You cannot ignore certain laws. She has no authority to do that. But when someone was busy promoting this secretary up the ranks in the police department, somehow she forgot to actually read the stuff that she was told to file. Oh, Tony, that was really sexist. You can't say something like that. Oh, I don't care. Producer Nick.
Maybe I'll follow that up with something worse to lessen that extreme there. Whenever we cover these controversial police chiefs, why do they always seem like they couldn't even arrest Stephen Hawking?
That's my point. That is my point. I'm just making the case.
A brisk walk would lead you away from that woman.
I have often made the case that if the head of a law enforcement agency is a guy who is too fat to wipe the grease stain off of his chin, or is a lady that is too small to have ever actually served on a beat with a little bit of oomph to it, I don't really think you need to be, leading the department.
And then when you go to their credential pages, as we have in the past, it's full of classwork that they've completed.
Oh, yeah. I got a degree in polishing handcuffs from Johns Hopkins in 2005. Yay, you're so brave. Some funny stuff from today that I'm going to have to play today because tomorrow it'll be old news. Trump pardoned Gobble and Waddle today. He also pardoned last year's turkeys because he said that they were pardoned by AutoPen. So he extended the pardon to those two. There's some, again, Trump just being funny. I do enjoy this particular thing. Here he was saying he was going to call him Chuck and Nancy, but then he would never pardon them. Here's the President of the United States.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them, I shouldn't say this. I was going to call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people. I wouldn't pardon them. I would.
You hear the turkey in the back. I think this is the first time. This is not something that matters. I don't even know why I know this stat. I did see it, and it was confirmed that Trump pardoned Gobble or Waddle, and the turkey then gobbled as the president was finishing his remarks, which means this is like the first time in decades that a turkey has thanked the president of the United States for pardoning them. So we got Dr. Doolittle in the White House. I'm sorry. No, it doesn't really matter. It's not necessarily news. He also said that people in his administration wanted him to not pardon any turkeys and send him to El Salvador.
Gobble and Waddle, straight to the terrorist confinement center in El Salvador. And even those birds don't want to be there. You know what I mean? It was a tough. I'd like to thank the president of that country. They do a rather efficient job. It's got to be the largest prison in history. I've never seen anything like it. And a lot of people are behaving on our streets now. Washington, D.C. is considered a safe zone.
And then he gets into the Chicago and Indiana stuff. One last thing that I wanted to cover, because it's particularly curious, is a situation regarding the Wall Street Journal. So the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, they hit the rails this morning, and there's that 28-point peace provision plan that the White House right now is arguing between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and then the Russian delegation and the Ukrainian delegation. There was a report now from the Wall Street Journal that a, quote, senior official, U.S. official, said that Ukraine significantly changed one of the 28 points in the version that appeared online. In an apparent move to expose alleged corruption, the draft had called for an audit of all international aid that Ukraine had received. The language was changed to say all parties will receive, quote, full amnesty for their actions during the war, end quote, at all. If you're going to try to convince people that you didn't do anything corrupt, that you didn't steal from other nations around the world, if you didn't steal from your own citizens, Ukrainians, who were fighting back against the Russian invasion. Again, I've said this before, I despise the Russian administration. I also despise the corruption of Eastern European countries. That is probably the one stereotype that I believe more than just about anything. Other than that, I hate Connecticut. Eastern Europe countries, all corrupt. Every single one of them. Just can't stand them. Poland is probably the least corrupt. Ukraine or Croatia, probably fighting for the right of most corrupt, particularly.
I love how they have implicitly admitted how bad their corruption is based off of how much Zelensky has rallied against the corruption of the Russian Federation. And so my question here is, what did you do that you're willing to just say, you know what, let's bygones be bygones when it comes to our corruption investigation?
As we talked about with Steve Cortez, who, by the way, is probably less on the, again, I am pro the Ukrainian people maintaining independence. I am also pro Russia's imperialistic dreams not being realized. I believe in one imperialistic dream, one and one only. That is, of course, the imperialistic dream for the United States. Aside from that, the fact that the financial version of the Ukraine's FBI, because they have a Bureau of Investigation for different matters, they have like sub-agencies, the fact that Zelensky did attempt to use the Ukrainian parliament to shut that agency down, that's suspicious. It is just suspicious. So two things can be true at once. I don't want Putin to win. I don't want Zelensky to win either. I don't want anyone over there. I want people to stop the shooting. I want corruption to end. And most importantly, all of those people who are trying to tell you that it's some kind of a Christian crusade or a freedom crusade on either side are full of it. No, the leadership of both countries are incredibly corrupt. They have been for a long darn time. Since Khrushchev moved Crimea out of the Russian delegation into his native Ukrainian government under the Soviet Union. So that's said and aside, I think that we'll wrap things up. It's 8:29 and 30 something seconds. I'd say that's enough for this evening. We're going to continue tomorrow with one last bout before the Thanksgiving holidays. We've got Kurt Schlichter on. Looking forward to that. He's got far spicier things than I have to say about the sedition in Congress. We will also hit the mail time questions that have come in. Of course, thanks to Maggie Bogdan, 6249 for the very, very kind super chat. Really, really, really nice of you. Cat on a Lake, we will give you the full backstory about Connecticut. David, we will talk to you about the magic wand question. And we'll talk about the question from Roselle Jam about Mark Kelly with Kurt Schlichter. So we will answer those questions tomorrow. I pinky promise. You have any other mail time questions, you can send those to TonyKinnett.com. TonyKinnett.com. There's a little tab, says contact. You can send a question in over there, or an insult, or your best recipe for soft bread. Some people have extra special recipes for like bread that's even softer and moister than some bread. I'm interested. Send that over here. I can't bake worth a darn, but my wife can. So those things said, have a great evening. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all take care.